What's going on, YouTube? And welcome back to Goal Line Hockey. It's your boy Kevin Forte, and today we are going over my top picks for the biggest sleepers going into the 2022-23 NHL season. If there's three teams I'm going over today, there's three teams that you could invest your stock into that you think are going to grow this season. These are my top three picks. These are teams that I think a lot of people are leaving as a little bit underrated. You know, people are talking about this team or that team, but they're not talking about these guys. And I want to give these guys some love and attention today. So we're going to start off in the Western Conference as we head to the Midwest. The Nashville Predators are first on our list. The Nashville Predators had a very interesting offseason. If you guys don't recall or remember, it's been a couple months, but Philip Forsberg decided to re-up with the Nashville Predators and signed a nice 8-year long-term extension. And that kind of turned everything around. They kept Philip Forsberg. They brought in Ryan McDonough, who I think is a very underrated move. You know, it was kind of a salary dump for Tampa Bay, but huge pickup for Nashville. And that Nashville blue line, dare I say it, looks almost as good, if not better, than the blue line they had during those cup runs in the mid-2010s. So keep that in mind here. I think Nashville is going to be a very good team. You also bring in Kevin Lankinen to back up Juice, who, again, as long as UC Saros is healthy, I think he's going to have another great season, probably in the Vezina conversation again this year. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens there in Nashville. If Juice is healthy and that blue line is as good as I think it is, it's going to be a very good hockey team. Not to mention they do have some of their younger guys that need to put up a little more production up front. I'd like to see a little bit more from guys like Eli Tolvanen and some of those other younger players in the system for Nashville. But overall, I think there's a lot of potential with this team, and I do see them being a very good hockey team this year, and that is one of my sleeper picks. Calgary. Calgary's next on the list as we're heading up to Canada, Alberta, and we're looking at the Calgary Flames. I think the Flames had a very good offseason, and if you were to ask Jacob Markstrom, he was actually quoted saying he thinks the team is better this year than they were last year. Now you look at what happened this summer. I've made multiple videos on this. You look at some of their key subtractions. They did lose Eric Goodbranson. They lost Johnny Gaudreau. And obviously they lost Matthew Tkachuk. Those were their three big guys that were lost. But they did bring in a decent amount of players to replace them. You look up front, they brought in Nazem Kadri and Jonathan Huberdeau, who are big additions to this team. And not to mention, they did also lose Sean Monahan to they traded him to the Canadiens. So before I forget that, bring that in there. So you've got Nazem Kadri, Jonathan Huberdeau. On the back end, you bring in Mackenzie Weegar. I think this is a team that is going to be very, very good. And I'm really sold on that second pair blue line. Excuse me. With Zadorov and Weegar. I think that's going to be a really good group with Daryl Sutter. I think Calgary, as long as they can score goals from Huberdeau and Kadri, and they can produce at that 100-plus point pace they were both at last year, keep an eye out for the Calgary Flames. I think they're going to be a real team to watch for again this season. And then the third team on my list, and this one's on the East Coast. So we do have an Eastern team here. That's the Ottawa Senators. Now, I was kind of torn between the Ottawa Senators and my pick that I'm mentioning here, but I just didn't think it was a good enough pick here. And that was the Detroit Red Wings. And the real difference between Detroit and Ottawa for me is goaltending. Now, the Red Wings did bring in Ville Husso, but I think the Ottawa Senators addition of Cam Talbot is better. I think Cam Talbot is a huge addition to that goaltending group for Ottawa. The fact they were able to play most of last season with Anton Forsberg, who was a little bit hurt, and Matt Murray, who was basically non-existent, the Ottawa Senators put together a fairly respectable season considering they did not have a goaltender last year. Cam Talbot comes in. This is a guy that it's probably going to be a one-year thing. He's got 1 year left on his deal. Maybe he signs a short 1 or 2 year deal after. But for right now, the Ottawa Senators get a really good goaltender this season. Obviously, I cannot forget to mention that they did add Alex DeBrincat, who was a huge addition to that team. So they kind of messed with things in trades with DeBrincat. They were to bring in Cam Talbot as well. And they also addressed the blue line. And the only way they addressed the blue line was by drafting that guy Jake Sanderson a couple years ago. And he's going to be playing in the NHL this season. And I think Jake Sanderson is a unbelievable talent. I think the Ottawa Senators got a real steal with him. And Tim Stuchla, I think his production's going to go up a little bit more, especially if he gets the chance to play with a guy like Alex DeBrincat. I think his numbers will continue to improve after signing that massive contract just a couple of weeks ago. So I'm really excited for the Ottawa Senators. I think they are the biggest sleeper in the Eastern Conference. I think it's tempering the expectations, right? I think most people's expectations of these three teams I mentioned, right? Nashville, could they make the playoffs last year? That was the conversation, and some people might still be in that lull, not realizing McDonough came in, not realizing that some of those younger players are continuing to develop there. Calgary, obviously they lost. Everybody's going to remember how they lost Gaudreau and Tkachuk, but do you remember the players that they acquired and got back? Again, that's a pretty big deal thing as well. And same thing for the Ottawa Senators. The Senators have been in the basement for the last 5-6 years now. So are people kind of still in that lull that, until proven otherwise, Ottawa's not good? I do think Ottawa will break out this season. So those are my three picks for the biggest sleepers in the NHL going into the 2022-23 NHL season. Let me know what you guys think. Who are the biggest sleepers in the NHL going into this season? Let me know down below. Guys, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Of course, that helps us out as we are on the road to 3,000 subscribers. Tell your friends and family and everybody else around you about Goal Line Hockey. Guys, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again next time.